All right, today we're going to look at the significant individuals of the colonial period. We're going to look at random people. There's 9 people that we're going to talk about what they did for the colonies and how they are important for us. So the first person that we have is Thomas Hooker. He was a reverend and leader of the group of Boston Puritans that migrated to Hartford, Connecticut. He gave a sermon in 1638 that influenced the writing of the Fundamental Orders of Connecticut, our first written constitution in America, and included individual rights in there. He believed in democratic ideas like elections by the people. People have the power to limit the power of the government, and the government operates with the consent of the governed. These ideas down here are ideas that we still use today. They were written about in the 1600s. So we're talking about a very important ideal set that Thomas Hooker had that he kept for us. The next one that we have is John Locke. John Locke was a European Enlightenment philosopher. He believed in personal liberty could coexist with political order, that your freedoms would be okay under political rule. Basically, you give the consent and the basis for our government and fixes its limits. Basically, we tell the government, here's what we're going to allow you to do. You do it. If you try to take more, we're going to have issues. Government is a social contract with limited powers and has obligations to its creators. The government is obliged to listen to you and to do your will. Government can be modified by its creators at any time. If we don't like what the government's doing, under John Locke's writings, we have the right to rebel against our government and make our changes. This influenced Thomas Jefferson greatly when he was writing the Declaration of Independence later on. And it discussed legislative and executive branches of government, and he wrote about unalienable rights, which originally in his first words were life, liberty, and protection of property. Later on, we modify protection of property to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Next one is Charles or Baron de Montesquieu. He expanded on Locke's beliefs. He added the judiciary to Locke's executive and legislative branches, so that's where we get our 3 branches of government, and wrote about the separation of powers and how each one of these groups needed to work independently from each other. He believed in a republic and education is an absolute necessity. He believed that the more intelligent the people were, the less likely we would have corruption and bad things happen to the people. Another thing, he also believed in freedom of speech, and he was quoted as saying that he may not agree with what you say, but he will defend your right to say it with his life if need be. So he was very important when it came to when we talk about our civil liberties and what we're allowed to do. Next, William Blackstone. He was an English judge, a jurist, or a judge that wrote stuff, and professor who wrote about historical analysis essays on common law or commentaries on the laws of England. He was considered as the definitive pre-revolutionary source of common law, or the law on the people. He believed strongly in religious tolerance, that we should agree to disagree on religion, on who is right, who is wrong, but we should work with each other. And supported the ideas of self-defense that later inspired the Second Amendment, that you should be able to defend yourself, especially if the government is trying to be cruel to you. Wrote about natural rights, rights like life and liberty and property, and also was one of the first people to really discuss women's rights. William Pinn, he was the founder of the colony of present-day Pennsylvania, where Quakers could live according to their religious beliefs and make political decisions according to those beliefs. He created an elected legislature as a feature of Pennsylvania's self-government. So basically, he's the reason that we have the idea that you can set up your own government and rule it however you want to, as long as everybody's in agreement. Next, we have Pocahontas. As you can tell right here by her birth date, we don't really know exactly the date she was born because the Powhatans did not have written record. But she was credited with helping John Smith and European settlers in Virginia. Accounts vary whether or not she was at Jamestown and had contact with the first settlers. Eventually, she did marry an Englishman, John Rolfe, and visited England with him. Sadly, she contracted a disease while she was in England and did pass away from that. Next to last that we have is Anne Hutchinson. She led Bible studies which brought into question Puritan theology and divided the community in Boston. She was brought to trial and convicted. She basically was trying to stir the pot. She made some people mad, and they decided, okay, you're out of here. And so she was kicked out from Boston. Later, she and her supporters resettled in Portsmouth, Rhode Island, and then once she was getting near the end of her life, she moved on to New York City, to a bigger area, to continue to talk about what her belief system was. Finally, we have Eliza Lucas Peckney. She is credited with developing indigo as a cash crop, and first on her family's plantation in South Carolina and then throughout the South. Basically, indigo is the material that's used to make the blue in the blue jeans. It became the second most profitable crop at this time behind tobacco, and more than a third of the exports consisted of indigo. So it became a very, very, very important deal once it was figured out what to use it for. So this is the end of our important people, and be ready for further instruction.